Hey there, in this video I'm going to show you how to import a TrueType font and how to create a sign distance filled font asset for it. So let's begin. We have our TrueType font here, which is Ganga 3. I'm going to import it in my fonts folder. It's right there. I'm going to minimize this. We're going to go to Windows, TextMesh Pro Font Asset Creator. I'm going to select this font right here. Now typically when I create a font asset, I don't change the default settings, so we're going to leave it on auto sizing. Font padding is basically the padding, but for sign distance field, this turns out to be the spread as well. So typically a spread of 5 or 7 is good enough. The only time you may want to go above that, and when I'm saying above is go to 10, maybe 11, is when you're looking at increasing the range of something like glow. And I can do a subsequent video to show you these different features. In terms of the Atlas resolution, for a simple font that's got mostly rounded edges, you can get away with a 256 by 256. Again, you should experiment with those. For most font, 512 by 512 is fine. Now for fonts that have really high frequency change or high details like a texture in the font or a pattern or something, you may want to go up to 1K. The only other exception to that is if you're trying to import, let's say, a large character set like Cyrillic plus the sort of normal Latin languages or Chinese or Korean, whatever, then you'd want to create an atlas that's bigger so you can pack more characters. Character set, we're looking for the ASCII, and we're going to use normal, and I'm going to go keep hinted smooth. Now I'm trying to generate an SDF with hinted smooth is not that, but the reason I'm saying this is I typically hit preview just to make sure the font renders okay, because sometimes when you're downloading public domain fonts, characters are missing, stuff is broken, so it's always good to hit preview before you generate the sign distance field. As you can see here, we wanted to generate the full ASCII, which is 95 characters, but we're only getting 78. That's because this font is missing some characters for whatever reason. But anyway, looks fine. So we're going to pick sign distance field 16. We could pick 32. Actually, I'll pick 32 so it takes a little bit longer time so you get to see what it should take. So the difference between 16 and 32 is basically the 16 or 32 represents an upsampling. So this font is going to be 80 points in size, which is the native Atlas resolution is 80 points. When we're saying 16, we're actually upscaling it 80 times 16, and then we're calculating the distance on that as opposed to doing the distance on the 80 size font. 32 means we're going to go 32 times 80, which is huge, and we'll generate the sign distance fill from that. So I'm going to pick 32. And we're going to preview the font. And preview is sort of the wrong label because it's actually generating it. So right now we're seeing it. It launched all the multi-threaded stuff in the background. Depending on the number of cores you have, it will take more or less time. But right now it's generating the SDF. Once it's done, we're going to see it right here. And this looks fine to me, so we're ready to save it. Just one comment or extra note before I save that. The amount of time it takes to generate, obviously the larger the atlas, the longer it's going to take, but the padding has a huge effect as well. So the greater the padding, the slower it's going to be, because then we're trying to compute the distance for a wider range of spread. Okay, but again, 5, 7, 8 maybe is good enough for pretty much every font. I'm going to save this. By default, it took the name of the font, added SDF. We'll say that's fine. We've saved it. We'll click OK. So at this stage, we looked at how to create the font and how to generate the SDF, which we now have here, the SDF font asset that was created right here. And as we created it, it associated a material already with it. Let me open this up a little bit. We can see our face style. This is the weight. When it's normal, the weight for bold, and the italic slant. Then we can see actually all the characters and where their UV coordinates are sitting right there. And I chose not to import a kerning table, but if it had one, it would show up right here. Okay, now let's create a TextMesh Pro object so we can play with this font. So by default, when I create a new TextMesh Pro object, it associates the Arial SDF to it. In this case, we want to swap right away to this new font. Now I'm going to zoom in just so we can look at it, look at the details. It looks nice. It's kind of cool. Now you can see here, there's a little artifact here. And the reason why in these sharp corners you can get some issues is when it's trying to get the distance here, it can get, confused into which side is closer and whatever. But, as you zoom out and you add border and effects, that won't really be visible. Um, so this is a nice looking font. Now let's start to manipulate it. First thing we're going to do is just for the fun of it, let's add a texture to the face of the font. And we'll pick this gradient right here. Okay, that looks good. Now if you look at the gradient, you know what, the line's like kind of nice. It's like, oh look, the line kind of dips here, then it goes higher. Let's see here, see the texture is right there, and then it goes up right here. Hey, what's going on? Well, here's what's going on. Right now our texture is mapped per character, horizontally and vertically. This basically means that as the characters go up and down, it will map it from the top to the bottom, and since the top of this letter and the bottom are different than this one, we end up with different things, right? Now, how do you fix this? Well, by the way, this may be desirable, which is why the option is there, but you may want to sort of normalize it. And the way you do that is you say, well, instead of mapping it vertically per character, map it per line. Now, if you watch what's going to happen, now it's all like normalized right there. They all line up. Now, what do they line up to? Well, if I go here and I add this character, for most character set, the $ ends up being the tallest character, like right here. And usually for most fonts, this is the character that dips the lowest. But in this font, we can see a big red X. That's because this character doesn't exist in that font. So I'm going to have to pick some other one. And I'll go for just like, not a lower, let's see, what letter? Y maybe? No. I guess this doesn't have like lowercase letters, maybe. So I'm not sure for this font which one's like the lowest character. It looks like this guy dips kind of low anyway. But as you can see, now our texture is mapped uniformly across the font. Now let's go add more stuff. Let's take a look at outline. So actually, let me go right here. So here I already kind of mentioned normal weight and bold weight. Here normal weight is 0, but if I was to change that, you can see I'm changing how the font appears at default. Okay, so you can choose to inflate a font or shrink it a little bit. It's up to you. Okay. And bold, if I was using bold, then this would make the bold appear bolder. If I was using italics, then this would basically change the angle of the slant. Okay, so back to our outline. So with outline here, I can add an outline, and as I've explained before, the outline is added on the edge of the font, right there. So the thicker it gets, it will spread on the outside and it will spread on the inside. So if I had a lot of thickness, eventually it kind of overrides the inside of the font itself, right? So depending on the font, you can add more or less. It's up to you to get the visual look that you want. Now, let's say you could not afford to chew in because it's this font's pretty wide, but there's some like the script fonts or the ones that are, sort of handwritten stuff. They tend to be skinnier. Usually an outline looks kind of weird on those because you're chewing in. Now some of the stuff you can do is I could choose to dilate the font to sort of reinflate it to make up for what I'm losing. But as you can see, this is like making it kind of bold. So that might not be a good option, or it could. It's up to you. Another option is to cheat. So, well, it's not cheating, but I guess if it works, it's not a cheat. So we can use the underlay. Now, underlay typically is used to add a shadow. So the way I would add a shadow is add an X offset here, the Y offset to move it where I want, and then I could, soften the shadow a little bit, which looks kind of cool, right? But instead of doing this, I'm going to keep it centered and I'm going to dilate underneath it. Let me remove the softness, and right now we have like it's half transparent, so I'll make it fully opaque. But as you can see, if I dilate the one underneath it, it creates a bigger font behind it, which creates the illusion of an outline. And this one doesn't chew on the inside, it stays right there. Okay, so that looks kind of neat. Let's see, let's add some softness to that. In this case, I'm actually going to switch back to using the normal outline. I will remove this. I will shift it because I want to get a shadow. Now we can see that we've created this cool looking hello world using this cool gradient with this font. And if I zoom in, you can see it's like super clean, super sharp, and pristine looking. Go back here and do something for fun. I could, if I wanted, like soften the font itself. See how I'm softening the edges of the outline? So to just give it like a little softer look. Well, that's it. So in this short video, hopefully, well, I guess it wasn't too short, 11 minutes, but hopefully this gives you a good feel for how to create a font atlas and how to basically play with padding and all these different things. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Thanks.